Let's see if I can get through this video without offending anybody or catching a violation. Well, hi there. My name is Charles Ray Dawson. I'm the Associate Broker Residential Sales Manager at ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 285. And Kimberly O'Neill just decided to start calling me as soon as the camera came on, so she can wait. So I hope you guys are all having a good day. This episode, I'm recording this on Wednesday on the 22nd because I got a really busy day tomorrow. And I had so much scheduled for today, and then people just decided to have little personal days on me and just like canceled everything out. So I'm sitting here waiting at the office for a couple hours, and I'm like, I might as well get this knocked out because I'm actually looking forward to this one. Because in the way of things, as it always is, I go and I record last week and I and I got it all rendering and whatnot, and I use my little downtime to look through the outrage machine and see what social media is talking about. I came across this really, really interesting tweet on X. And I don't know how many of you guys are on X right now, but you have the ability to write articles on there. And it was a pretty decent article. All right. And I will find it and put it in the show notes below if you want to read the original. I strongly recommend it. It was a person commenting on a conversation of two intellectuals were having about another article. All right. So we got 4 people involved in it right now. We have the original article. Okay. And then we have 2 other people commenting on that article and getting in a little discussion between the 2 of them. And this is the 4th person. Now, both the article and both commentaries from both brain trust people are all behind paywalls. Okay. So I am taking all of this on hearsay and secondhand information, but this particular guy was really good at cutting and pasting large chunks of the article out. So the original article was called, "It's Hard to See My Parents Live So Lavishly While We're Struggling." Okay, and every boomer out there just eye rolled, all right? And even here on the X side, we don't eye roll, we just go, okay, tell me more, millennial. Why is your life so hard? And then you had 2 different people, sociologists and economists, discussing that article, all right? So the article has a bunch of little mini stories in it where they're interviewing various individuals about basically why do your boomer parents hate you so much and how are they making your life miserable? And the lead-in example was this guy who's working. What was he doing? He's works for a property management firm, does landscaping. He wants to start his own landscaping company. And his father started his own company, ran his own company, sold out to a hedge fund, and is quite happily living the life of what happens when you're a blue-collar worker, start your own company, and then the hedge funds come along, and your kid doesn't want to take over the company, so you just sell it to the hedge fund and retire. You see that a lot. We've talked about this before in the past. So he wanted to borrow money from his dad to start his own company. And he comes up, here's my business plan. This is this is how I expect to pay you back, Dad, and everything else. And he asked his dad for $15,000, a loan of $15,000. And Dad said no. And the kid was a little butthurt about it. So the interviewer interviews the dad, and Dad's response was, "It's not that I can't afford to help him. I just have a real problem with handouts, and I want him to have the satisfaction of knowing he's built something himself and with his own hard work. That's how I was raised too." All right. I'm completely on board with that. All right. I would put that little caveat in as if your son comes up to you and go, and here's my business plan. All right. And if the business plan is good, all right, and this is my projections, and this is how I intend to pay you back, father of mine. Maybe give kids some leeway on that. So, anyways, this caused another person to read this story about these, the angst of these millennials sitting out there, perceiving themselves as struggling in the universe. All right, while their parents are kicking back, going down, basically spending their inheritance or whatever it is. Like, you see, the folks, they could obviously give you a hand, get you started and stuff like that, but they're not. That could make for a really awkward Thanksgiving dinner. All right. But a gentleman that I follow named Rob Henderson, who is amazing. All right. He's the one who coined the term luxury beliefs. Google that and go down that rabbit hole. In fact, he commented back and he said that the way the article was written is that says millennials are struggling, but here's the economics. Right. The economics, the spreadsheet says, spreadsheet line goes up. They're not struggling. They just think they are. And the author, this person who's tweet comes back and goes, yeah, the line's going up, Rob, but you're not understanding the loss of a different kind of capital that your economic sociology is not covering, right? Introduces the term social capital. All right. Now, in my world, social capital is basically your reputation. All right. Your social capital is like, do you have friends? Are they good friends? If you broke down in the middle of the night, do you have friends that you could call? Do you have friends who would refer you to others for like job opportunities? That's my concept of social capital. What he does is he looks at social capital as a aspect of society. All right. And goods and services that used to be handled by a functioning society that millennials now have to pay for. That is a really intriguing concept. So I'm reading this article. I'm like, why the hell did you have to send this out right after I recorded my own video? And I basically said, okay, I'm going to record this. And I was like, a lot of times I do these things and I go down the math rabbit hole. I really run the math. Okay, I want to see if that person, what the guy's speculating out there and going, oh, this is the cost of this and this is the cost of this, if it reflects real world numbers, especially real world numbers here in Phoenix. All right, so let's go through his article real quick. All right. He says that the millennial cohort are failing to move through the 5 pillars, what's considered a stable middle class existence. All right, I don't know if you guys ever remember. Couple years ago, I used to quote the 4 things to do to stay out of poverty. All right, one of them was graduate high school. Another one is don't get married before you're 21. Don't have kids before you're 25. And I can't remember what the 4th one is. But it was just real basic. Hey, don't be a screw up and you won't wind up on the poverty end, the bottom 5th quintile. All right. He says for a stable middle class existence, you have to have education. All right. Stable employment. All right. A good marriage, home ownership, and children, because children keep you out of trouble. All right. Now, he says that the previous generations were able to take advantage of highly valuable and productive social capital, as well as their exploding financial capital. All right. So let's break it down to what he's talking about, social capital. All right. Lacking access to this social capital, you, the millennial, then have to pay for stuff that previous years ago in 1965 you just assumed was the normal. All right. And so he goes, home ownership is more expensive. Education is more expensive. Right. This is offset by the cost of non-essential goods. Okay. So when everybody says, oh, things are so much cheaper now, it's like, yeah, a television is a hell of a lot cheaper today in employment hours than it was in 1972. Right. And they're bigger and they're flatter and you get more channels. Okay. And as hours worked compared to buying your Zenith as opposed to buying your Samsung, the Samsung is pretty much cheaper, right? These are when things go down. Anything with a screen's gone down cheaper. All right. Phones, iPhones are expensive because you want to be able to say you have an iPhone. Right. There are very cheap phones out there. They're not going to impress your friends. You're not going to get the little color text when you text somebody out. They're going to know you're a loser because you're not coming across in iPhone colors. We just had a running conversation here earlier today where we were trying to explain to Steve the importance of iMessaging and how it works and why you can't, if you have an Android phone for whatever reason, and your client's trying to text you from Tokyo, he's going to have to use an app to do that because you don't have an iPhone. All right. So one of the other things on this, okay, is, all right, presenting false equivalencies that imply a level of choice that younger generations do not actually have. All right. For example, an American family in 1975 could send their children to public school on the assumption that a vast majority of their children would, and they list a couple things in here. One of them is belong to intact families. All right. Children of intact families tend to have less outbursts and less school disruption. All right. Sorry, you've got daddy issues. You're going to take it out on the nearest male role model that you have, and that just might be your English teacher. All right. And would speak English as a first language, which also, that's one of those terms right here is, is it disruptive to a student if they're in a class and the teacher is having a split education between talking to the English primary speaking students and then the other students in there has English as a secondary language? Does that detract from the overall experience? Right? Not inside the scope of this podcast. Go do your own research, right? Stay off of anything that says Stormfront. All right. But when you're looking at these things, you see stuff like, television, clothing, food, air travel. They're cheaper, but getting the social capital and having it applied to your household. All right. Are people paying for that to get the things that you used to get for free in 1975? All right. So functional public schools, trusted neighbors, a productive courtship culture, predictable career arcs, and a public square in which children could roam and adults could be relied upon. All right. This, once given for free, is no longer there anymore, according to the author. All right. So, in looking back on it, I mean, my generation is off Generation X. Whoop, X. All right. We were known as the latchkey kids. And 60 Minutes and Dateline would do huge articles about the fall of Western civilization because these kids were letting themselves into their house by themselves after school. And mom wasn't there. Or dad wasn't there. And we were left to run around the house by ourselves in the neighborhood. Feral, free-range children running in packs, throwing rocks, riding bicycles, poking dead things we found in the alleyway. Now, I think that's the reason why Generation X is the last resilient generation out there. But then I have text from a boomer today, makes me wonder if even they're that resilient. But, when you take these discrete goods, okay, when we take these things, it's like, is this going to be a functional school? Is this a school that my kid is going to get an education in, all right, to better themselves? Am I going to worry that Johnny is not going to be able to read? All right. There's a way to offset that. You used to be able to put Johnny in any public school out there and have a pretty good understanding that if Johnny's coming back with a D or a C, okay, it was Johnny, not Gladys, the teacher, who checked out 3 years ago because she's she's just about to retire with her pension, and she gives no's, right? So how do we get around that? Well, you go and you research your school districts. And when you research your school districts, and I've seen this before with buyers with kids, they are hyper focused on school districts. They want A+. Then they get seriously offended that they can't afford an A+ school district. And so they have to settle for an A-, maybe a B+. Find other offsetting things that will help them. Okay, all right, well, settle for the B+ because it's really close to the grandparents, and the grandparents can offset by doing babysitting service. Like the grandparents are just automatically going to want you to drop their kids off, or the bus to drop the kids off, anything like that, right? But another function along these lines is, because everybody's a two income household right now, is daycare. I find it really interesting that just yesterday I was hearing them rattle off a list of things that the Democrats are saying they're going to push this election season. All right. And it was healthcare and daycare. like all-day daycare, government-funded, not preschool, but lower daycare. Here's your fetus. Drop them off, right? The state will raise your child for you. But this is them looking at their potential voters, okay, who tend to be, we call them awfuls, and what is their pain points, okay? And their pain points are daycare and healthcare, because those things have gone up in the last 20, 30 years, all right? The things that have gone up are housing, utilities, healthcare, daycare, all right? So we sit there and we look at this situation. So, okay, now you want to have them, you need to pay for a more expensive house to put your kids in so they can go to an A+ school. All right. And this is pushed across the entire thing. So it used to be back in the 1990s, and this was a rule of thumb when I was growing up, and I knew it, is that you needed your purchasing power, all right, for your medium income house that you're going to be, should be about 3 times your annual rate. All right. So now it's like 5.2. All right. So if you want the $500,000 house, all right, you need to be pulling, $100,000 a year. All right. And that's at 5. That's your 5 times. All right. And you're going to be house poor at that. So this is where I started going into the numbers. Okay. So we're looking at what's our medium household income here in Maricopa County. What is that times 3? All right. What kind of house can we get for that? And my next question is, what are the school districts like? Right. Other things that you buy, that you purchase with the social capital is having a safe neighborhood. All right. Having a safe neighborhood nowadays translates it as too expensive for poor people who tend to crime to live next to me, and preferably something gated and something you have to drive through. Okay. This is the perception of people that are looking for these Tony gated communities, right? And they're not going to say it out loud. All right. I've tried, because I'm an asshole that way. I'll see where you're going, and I'll try to make you say the bad words. All right. I'll ask him, like, well, is public transportation important to you? No, it's not. I'm sitting there watching, looking at your Biden-Harris bumper sticker on your car and stuff like that, all right? But if you're voting for public transportation, you're not using it. What exactly are you doing? All right, except trying to take care of your personal guilt. All right. So let's break it down. Let's start doing the numbers. Now I got numbers right here, right? 55% of the silent generation own their own homes by the age of 30. All right. For boomers, that came down to 48%. For Generation X, it was 42. All right. And for the millennials right now, it's 33%. All right. And the Zoomers haven't even hit the purchasing point. They're not in the game yet. Why aren't they in the game? Because in this same time, okay, the median age of the first-time home buyer in the 1980s was 29 years old. All right. Today, it's 40. I had that conversation with a couple buyers who they're literally just underneath the median purchase, and they keep seeing it get moved up 1 year as they get 1 year older. All right. And this is part of the reason. They also they want a neighborhood that has things getting paid for that the social capital used to get paid for. They want a nice, safe neighborhood. All right. Strangely enough, their concept of nice, safe neighborhood is different than mine. All right. So they don't want to live anything. If they drive in there and they see a Gadsden flag or something, they're noping the hell out of there, right? They don't perceive that as being a safe neighborhood. And ironically, it actually probably would be if you look at the crime stats. We're going to look at the crime stats here in a second. All right. So I take the median household income, back to the numbers, 90,000. $90,500 for Maricopa County. All right. Times that by 3.2. All right. And we get $289,600. $289,000, all right, is 3.2 times median household income. All right. And then what I do is I ran a search on that. Okay. Let me show you how this search worked out. Just rattling off the numbers right now, we got 24,000 houses for sale right now in the MLS. If you do a really simple search here, as soon as this thing decides to catch up with me, there we go. Really simple search. All right. I went up to 300. All right. Should be looking at 289. I went up to 300. 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Not talking about pools, not talking about garages, not talking any amenity. I didn't even screen for size. All I wanted to know is under 300,000, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Right? Every little green dot you see on the screen is one of those. There are 22 in total. 22 out of 24,000. Out of 24,000 homes for sale, 22 of them were single-family homes under 300,000. And if you notice, there is nothing west of the 10 or east of the 10. Definitely nothing east of the 101. All right. The entire east side of the valley is gone. Okay, so if you're working in the Tempe, Chandler, Gilbert, Mesa area, all right, you can't afford a house. Not a house. Might be able to get you in a townhouse or a trailer or something like that. And then we look at these areas over here. There's a prize way out there. Okay, here's one in Litchfield Park. Okay, but I just narrowed it down, and I literally just sat there, did the list, top to bottom, finding the first house that was actually livable. What it had to do to qualify as a livable house, all right, is I had to see pictures. All right. I had to make sure that there wasn't too much damage in the walls or anything like that. Did this look like a house you could move in that day? As opposed to investor special, right? There was a lot of these 22. There's a lot of investor specials, right? But I did find one house, right? And this one house is pretty much move-in ready, right? It's right here. Now, everybody in Phoenix who's watching this video just went, oh yeah, we all know that neighborhood. All right, this is between Thomas and McDowell and 67th Avenue, 59th Avenue, and over here is probably, what would that be, 41? Anyways, this little block, okay, Maryville, that you hear me talk about, is actually to the west of this, right? This house is located right here off of 59th and Encanto Boulevard, right? I don't know what this is from a walking neighborhood kind of stuff, but I do know this is all commercial down here. That's going to be commercial up there. There's a Desert West Park. Okay. That is theoretically in walking distance. It's only 1 kilometer away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, you can get there in a click. All right. And it's got preschool, elementary school, another elementary school, and the Academy of Math and Science, which is probably a middle school. Don't know where the high school is on this whole thing. But I look up the listing, and so reading off the listing, I start pulling off all the things that are going on with this particular property right here. All right. It is listed for $289. It is $600 less. All right, but $289. It is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's got a 2-car garage. I didn't search for a 2-car garage. This one's got one. All right, cool. It is 1,911 square feet. So let's take a look at this chart. All right, 289 is what you should be able to afford in 1980. In 1980s, running those numbers. This one's 289. Right, it's a 3-2-2-car garage, no pool, 1,911 square feet, built in 1974. Here's your school districts. Palm Lane Elementary gets a C. All right, from the state. The Trevor, that should be Trevor, not Trevor. Trevor Brown High School is a B. All right, looking at the dynamics of these two, what can I not get? How many kids are, I do know that Palm Lane Elementary has, on certain demographics, a 20% of truancy rate. I don't know if that means that any one day 20% of the kids are not there because they're being truant, or if 20% of the kids at some time are going to call hooky. All right. But Trevor Brown High School, B. One thing I would like to say about both of these schools is that they have about 100% rate. I can't even think of the right word for it. They have 100% move-on rate. All right. Nobody's held back in these classes. Nobody at all. Nobody has to stay back another grade. They all transition properly. All right. Yay team. All right. But this is not an A+ school. All right. This is not a school, all right, where your kids, if they have, strangely enough, they do have a lot of learning disabled kids, special needs kids. A lot, like statistically improbable. They're like 30% or something of all the kids in elementary school have something going on with little Johnny. All right. But this is the school district you're raising your kids in. All right. In the little inside joke that we have in real estate, it's like we have A+ schools, B schools, and then can your kid fight schools. Just looking at this school and everything like that. This is a can your kid fight school. All right. So next thing we want to look at this house property. What's the crime rate? Well, here's the crime rate. This gets a rate of a C- overall. Violent crime, it gets a D. Property crime gets a D+. Other crime grade is B-. In case you're wondering what B- is, that is stuff like identity theft, white collar crimes, that kind of stuff. Crimes, if you're worried about rape and sexual assault, okay, that's your D. All right. Property crime is people breaking into your stuff. Now, this is a state site. What really bothered me about this state site is it broke down everything as cost per household, right? Not that you're going to get $2,000 of your stuff stolen, right? But they have added a cost per crime, right? Like you kill somebody, it's $1 million. All right. And then they divide how many people get murdered by how many people live in the neighborhood. And then everybody sucks up a little bit of that cost of so-and-so getting murdered. And it comes in from there. So you're getting a C- overall crime grade, and it is 3 times the national average. I should have grabbed that chart. All right. And it's like, did you know Arizona has a lower crime rate than the rest of the country? Not by a lot, but a little. We actually score less. All right. So we are, 3 times as likely to be a victim of a crime here in this zip code than anywhere else in the country. And we're one of the better states. Think of it that way. This is like little mini California over here or something like that. All right. So wrapping this whole thing up is to own a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Okay. At 3 times your income, it's going to cost you this. You can buy this house today. But buying that house in 2026, 3 times your income in 2026, is not going to get you, that's pretty much almost the same size house. Okay. We know this was built brand new in 1974. I'll let them know what the price of it was then. All right. But are you getting the same schools? Are you getting the same crime stats? All right. Are you going to the same emergency rooms and getting the same care of service at the emergency rooms? All right. That was the point of this, because what do people do? All right. Millennials now have to save for private schools. If they want their kid to go to an A+ school, they have to find themselves a Montessori school or something like that and pay for that. If they want to live in a low crime neighborhood, they either have to move to a low crime neighborhood, or they have to live in a gated community, or pay extra for cameras and whatnot. All right. Babysitting. If you don't have any people who have kids in your neighborhood or live a couple blocks away from the grandparents, now you have to pay child care. All right. Child care, all right, annual cost for $13,000 per kid. That's one kid. It's over $1,000 a month for somebody else to watch your kid. All right. And infant care now exceeds in-state college tuition. So that's a problem if you're going back to school. All right. The whole rest of this article, a lot of this has to do with student loans. Okay. It's just that But the whole ultimate wrap of this thing is that the goods and services that we used to get just by living in America aren't there anymore. All right. So now the millennials have to pay for that. Okay. And by paying for that, I mean, what good is it to be able to get a big screen TV from Amazon delivered to your house if you have to be there? Because if it's not, it's going to get stolen off your front porch. All right. Is that really a savings? So, anyways, really interesting article. I'll put it in the show notes below. But it really, the funny thing is that reading this article, I realized that I had like a little mental, I don't want to say it's a mental block, all right? But I get that question a lot. Is this a safe neighborhood? My definition of safe is completely different than your definition of safe. All right. You might have a higher or lower threshold than I do. Okay. I can pretty much move into any neighborhood. All right. Find some neighbors to get along with. We'll signal to them that, hey, I'm cool. And also don't fuck with me. All right. And it works. I have firearms. All right. My wife used to hit people with sticks as a hobby. Right. We have a pretty much higher threshold, okay, than somebody who's basically coming out of white bread to suburbia. All right. So you're lacking street smarts and social concepts of how not to piss off your neighbors. So, fun story. Strangely enough, I was thinking about this the other day. Is that when I moved into my neighborhood, like the first, second week there, garbage day back then was Tuesday. So one day I roll my garbage cans out, and later on I walk out there to get the garbage can. My garbage can's missing. I look around, wife didn't collect it. And then I look across the street, all right? And my neighbors across the street, they're sitting outside of their work truck and stuff, and I see my garbage can over next to theirs. They now have 2 garbage cans instead of just 1 garbage can, and it has that sticker that my garbage can had on it. I don't know why it had a sticker. It's KNIX radio, whatever. Now I know why the original owner had a sticker on it, all right? So without thinking, I just walked over, hit their driveway, glanced over, and realized there are 3 very large men staring at me. As I walk over and I grab my garbage can, and I start walking it back. The 3 guys are looking at me the entire time. I look at them and go, my garbage can got lost. And I walk it back, and I leave it there. All right, now it's in my driveway. It's my garbage can. Never had a problem with those guys for the next 7 years until they moved. 0. Right? I passed the frickin' test. All right. Now, your mileage may vary. All right. You might want to call the cops on something like that, and it took a little while. And to be honest with you, if I noticed all 3 of them, would I have gone over and done that? Don't know. All right. That might have been a complete accident on my part. All right. And making a charisma check and coming up with exactly the right answer when I realized, oh, wow, you just walked into yourself a potential serious beatdown. But it was a proper response. No yelling, no calling them out. No, hey, mother effer, that's my garbage can. Walk over, grab it, look at them. It got lost. Give them a face-saving way to get out. All right. Didn't have to deal with them until the rest, like I said, 5-6 years later, they moved out. Somebody bought it, renovated it, moved in a cop who's very surly and doesn't like to talk to anybody. Who's a great neighbor, by the way. So that neighborhood that I live in, right? 1, never look up your own neighborhood on the crime stats. Right? We're not great. We're not bad. Really interesting why we had a whole bunch of cop cars running down the street a couple weeks ago, running full code, and whatnot. Okay, but other than that, yeah, once a year we get a little bit of drama. All right. Other than that, except for the neighbor's kids throwing rocks, not a lot of property, some theft. But that's life in Phoenix, okay? I would rather live in downtown Phoenix at my price point, making my monthly payment, than living up in Tatum Ranch, paying freaking $3,000 to $5,000 a month in a gated community with an HOA who's going to complain about what kind of flag I fly outside my house, and adding a good 20 to 30 minutes to my commute. Not going to do it. So my mileage varies in your mileage. All right. And unfortunately, it's going to reflect in your price point when you're looking for houses. So let's talk about our houses real quick. And these are numbers for July 22nd, 2026. Active this week are 23,877, down 283 from the previous week. Our new listings are 1,858, which is down 113. Our contracts are up 120 to 2,034. Closings this week was 1,560. Coming soon to an MLS near you is 471 new listings. Our supply is at 101.1. Our demand is at 81.4, giving us a Crawford report number of 80.5. So what does this mean to everybody? Well, it's real estate, and it's real estate in the summertime. So like I said, I hope you guys find that article as interesting as I did. I do tend to go down these weird little rabbit holes I don't really seem to care about, but you are my followers, and you have to put up with my bullshit every once in a while. But I don't know if I've explained to you guys how much I really like Substack, and I really encourage everybody to get on it. Most of these articles were repeated on Substack. It was just, like I said, behind paywalls and whatnot, but it's nice to have somebody do like a long form researched report on things, all sorts of things out there, not necessarily just a 140 character text. Although strangely enough, this was on X and it was really well done. There's more things out there than you're going to get in a little soundbite on your regular news service and stuff. So do the research, go out there and figure out what's going on in the world. I think social media is all about the outrage and the, hey, get people angry or upset or something so they'll pay attention and click on it. Substack's more like, all right, I'm going to explain something to you, and it might take you 15, 20 minutes of reading. People used to remember how to do that. So, but hey, you also have television. You just turn on the television and some talking head will tell you something that was focus group to tell you what you're supposed to think about something else. So, and that's the end of that editorial. Watch your children or pets around water. Do not drive in anything flooded. Work your circles every day. Call your mother. Call your mother. All right. Not expecting any monsoons anytime soon, but you never know. You guys have a great weekend. I'll talk to you later.